Shalom, this is Karen Hannah from Jerusalem, and welcome to our exploration today of the new Hebrew month of Av, which begins tonight. So the first of Av will be tomorrow. It's a very, very paradoxical month, and Shalom, I'm seeing people. Welcome those of you who are able to join us. It's really good to see you. Those who cannot join us today, let's hope you will enjoy the repost of this. Okay, so let's begin. As I said in the title, that the life is filled with paradox, and this is one of the issues that the month of Av explores. And the question is, the paradox is there, but how do we deal with it? Now, the actual literal name of Av, the meaning of the name, the word Av in Hebrew, is father. And you hear the children in Israel calling Ima is mother and Abba is father, which is actually the Aramaic version of Av. And we also call our Abba, our Father in heaven, Avinu Shebashamayim, also based from the same root. Now, we find the reference to Av in many places, obviously in the Bible, but the one is Psalm 103 verse 13, which says, Karachem Av al Banim, as a father is merciful to his children, so has Hashem shown mercy to those who fear him. Now, I'm just pointing out here that I've just settled in my new home. The pictures aren't up yet, and I'm just dealing with the new situation of the recording and the lights. So just bear with me with all the little different light issues here, but we will just persevere and go on. Right, now we've been, since the 17th of Tammuz, we've been in the season of the 3 weeks called Bein HaMitzarim, which means in the narrow straits. And this will end on the 9th of Av, so tomorrow is the 1st of Av, so the 9th of Av will be on, what day will that be? The 1st of August will actually be the fast day of the 9th of Av. And we know that the core of the month is the loving heart of a father, of Avinu Shebashamayim. But historically, this has always been a time of great tragedy and destruction for the Jewish people. And we know that on the 17th of Tammuz was when the walls of Jerusalem were breached by the enemy. And on the 9th of Av, which is the major fast day, is when the first and second temples were destroyed. And isn't it just very sad that we see examples of this now today in our own time, with a terrible attack on the family at Chalamish or Neve Tzuf in the Shomron, where 3 generations of families were seated around the Shabbat table, and a radical young Muslim terrorist broke in and slaughtered the wife and the husband of the grandmother of the family, whose name is Tova, and I know we're all praying for her. But she witnessed this murder of her family before her eyes. Thank God the son's wife managed to get the children into another room and they were saved. But I thought, what a thing that here we see an example of what the Jews have suffered throughout history, the irrational hatred and attack of the enemy. Well, we just know, though, that our hope is in the Lord, that our Father in heaven has the strong hand of redemption and salvation, and He is with us, and He has brought the Jewish people, His people, through all these tragedies and destructions of history, and our trust is in Him. So while we mourn and grieve for the senseless and needless death, and we also have the hope and the promise that the full redemption is coming. Because many people ask, well, as believers, we know if Messiah has come, do we still need to fast? And we do, because of this sense that we have seen redemption. God has brought great redemption in the earth, but the full redemption is yet to come. We're still waiting the full redemption, the return of Mashiach ben David, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, who will come and establish God's kingdom fully in the earth. And so we fast for the sadness and the hatred and the senseless murder that we still see today. We're still waiting for that full redemption to come to all people. Right, let's go on. So we've had this hope, the hope of 2,000 years that Jerusalem would be restored, that the temple would be rebuilt for the King of Kings to be enthroned and to establish God's kingdom over all the earth. And the great shofar of Aliyah has sounded, and His people are back in the land. And well, as you know too, I mean, the Passover Seder every year, it always ended with L'Shana Haba'ah B'Yerushalayim. And now we can rejoice in that we can say, this year in Jerusalem. We don't have to wait till next year, that we can already say this year in Jerusalem. Now, the Christian author Graham Cook, he proclaimed, now we're starting to look at the subject of paradox here, and Graham Cook said, every great truth about God is a paradox. Now that's something, a great claim to make, that we know that there's absolute truth, there's certain truths we can have total faith in, but he's pointing out that every great truth contains paradox. And one of my favorites, and I know some of yours as well, Jewish teacher and scholar Abraham Joshua Heschel, he says the Hebrew mind can handle this dynamic tension of the language of paradox, confident that all is in the hands of heaven except the fear of heaven. So that is a truth in Judaism. They say that we can trust that all is in God's hands. He is the creator. He is the Almighty. But the one thing He will not control is man's heart and man's fear of heaven, or reverence of who God is and belief in who God is. So that is a difference. And we find this paradox issue, we see a great difference between the Greek mindset and the Hebraic mindset, the Hebrew mindset. And this is the opportunity the church has been given since the restoration of Israel. So many Christians around the world are beginning to look back to the roots of the faith and to realize that the Bible is written from a Hebraic perspective. And Yeshua himself had a Hebraic mindset. And over the centuries, the Greek mindset has infiltrated into the thinking of the church and of Christians, but now people are being challenged to make this difference and to start understanding the Bible and the truths of God from a Hebraic perspective. Now, my dear friend Marvin Wilson, who wrote the classic now, Our Father Abraham, there's a paragraph here, but I have, with apologies to Marvin, transposed it into the present, because it's a little pet peeve of mine that often when Christian scholars write about the Jews or Jewish thinking, they write it in the past tense as if it was only at the time that Jesus was alive on earth. But that mindset has continued through the centuries, so it applies today as well. So I'll read it to you in the present tense. It says, "The Hebrew knows he does not know all the answers. He refuses to over-systematize or to force harmonization on the enigmas of God's truth or puzzles of the universe. He realizes that no one can straighten what God has made crooked. All things, therefore, do not need to be fully rational. We can't understand. God's mind is so far greater than ours that we cannot claim to try and understand everything in God's mind perfectly." So he continues, "The Hebrew mind is willing to accept the truths taught on both sides of the paradox. It recognizes that mystery and apparent contradictions are often signs of the divine." When suddenly something comes up in the Bible and we say, what does this mean? How can this be? And you see all the way through that some of the rabbis, some rabbi says this and another rabbi says that, and they will argue, and there's this paradox, the mystery in the middle, and that people see it from different sides. Stated precisely, the Hebrews know the wisdom of learning to trust in matters that they cannot fully understand. We cannot fully understand everything of God and His Word and His ways and His thoughts. So there will be paradox, and where there's paradox, there will be mystery. Where there's mystery, there will be argument, because people will be trying to solve the mystery in their own way. But this is the thing with the Hebrew mindset. The people are prepared to question. You always question this and question that, and realize, well, you'll have a different answer and you will have a different answer, but you both may be right. So this is part of the difference, where with the Hebraic mindset, and you encouraged to question. I mean, you're not just fed truth and expected to swallow it and say, well, that's wonderful, okay, now I believe that. Everything must be open to question, and that's where the mystery and the paradox comes in. But the Greek mindset is very rational, and it wants complete answers. I remember in some conferences, there was one time Dwight was teaching on the, Dwight, my late husband, who was a great teacher, he was teaching on the binding of Isaac, Akedat Yitzchak. And there's always been a question, like some people say, well, it says he was a lad, a boy, so he was a young boy, but others say no, but maybe he was big enough, he was old enough to carry the wood of the sacrifice. He must have been older. And so Dwight was explaining the different approaches to this question, and at the end, somebody came up and said, but now Dwight, tell me, how old was he actually? How old was he really? And he wanted a cut and dried answer, and he missed the whole point that we don't know. The Bible doesn't say he was so many years old. It just leaves it open to question. Right now, let's get back to Av the month. It's divided in two, just as the sign of a paradox, where you have different aspects and different ways of looking at things. The month itself is divided. Now, the first half, while the moon is waxing full, is a time of mourning. In Israel, no weddings are held during the 3 weeks from the 17th of Tammuz to the 9th of Av. There are no weddings, there are no live concerts or happy parties or anything. But it's this time of sorrow, especially the 9 days, the first 9 days of Av, that's a time of really deep soul searching and mourning and sorrow. And then it culminates with the fast on Tisha B'Av, which will be the 1st of August. But then as the moon starts waning again, it brings with it a time of comfort and joy and celebration. And every week then the beautiful haftarahs are read after the Torah portion of Isaiah. And they're all beautiful passages of consolation and God just pouring out his love on his people again. So one day that comes is the 15th of Av, which is Tu B'Av. So you have Tish'a B'Av, the 9th of Av, which is the heavy fast day when we read the book of Lamentations, and really observe it as a fast day. But then on the 15th of Av, Tu B'Av, is what's come to be known in Israel as Sweethearts Day. It's a day of love and celebration. Now, what's the difference? And actually, this day, the 15th of Av, Tu B'Av, was celebrated as a joyous festival of celebration hundreds of years, even before the first temple was built. And it takes place around the area of the Shomron where the tabernacle was established at Shiloh. And so it's a very, very old celebration of the harvest. It's actually the grape harvest time. And today you can go to Shiloh and you can see beautiful vineyards and the beautiful grapes that are harvested there today. Now, you actually read the story in the book of Judges, and it's about how certain men in the tribe of Benjamin, which Benjamin's area is part of the Shomron, just north of Jerusalem. These men, unfortunately, some of the men of Benjamin committed some rather terrible acts of rape and murder against members of the other tribes, women. And in response, the tribes all got together against Benjamin and attacked them, and they took the women and children, but they killed the men, and only 600 were left. And these 600 fled to a place of refuge in the hills of Rimmon. There were high cliffs, and it was a place of refuge for them. But then, thank the Lord, after a while the tribes repented of such a harsh decree and action against the tribe of Benjamin. So they repented and they made peace with their brothers, the Benjaminites. But now they realized these men are left and they need to start building up their tribe again, and they had to find wives. So, and maybe these are some of the wives that were the women that were kidnapped, we don't know. But they said, right, they told them, when it's the time of the grape harvest, go to Shiloh, and every year the women get dressed in white, and they go and dance in the vineyards as they're doing the harvest. And then you can go and you can approach them and you can select a wife for yourself. So they did this, and it was a great success. And so to this day, I mean, matches were made, and hopefully there were happy marriages, and the tribe of Benjamin was built up again. And so to this day, that day is known as Sweethearts Day. And all over the land, which is rather lovely, after the long hot summer, the land looks pretty dry and brown, and these beautiful white squill flowers all bloom and blossom, and they just look like bridal lace when they open up, and it's a sign of this day and of a remembrance of this festival of Tu B'Av, of Sweethearts Day. Well, I'll just read it to you here, because it said you can find the story in Judges chapter 21 verses 20 and forward. And they did say, go and hide in the vineyards and watch. If the daughters of Shiloh come out to dance in the dances, then come out of the vineyards and seize each man his wife from the daughters of Shiloh, and return to the land of Benjamin. So the last weeks of Av are marked with harvest and romance and weddings, and they act as a preparation for the beautiful month of Elul that will be coming up next after Av, which bring with them the fall feasts and the promise of the return of the Lion of the tribe of Judah and the wedding supper of the Lamb. So, which we read about, of course, in Revelation. So that's a lovely end to the month of Av that starts with great mourning and sorrow. Now, every month we've been looking at a woman of the Bible that is somehow connected with the month. And the woman for this month is the great prophetess and judge Deborah, or Deborah. And she lived in this area of the Shomron as well. And she served, her position as a judge in Israel was the great, great honor. I mean, the great judges of Israel, you can think there was Samson, and for a woman to be in that position was really a great honor. And she used to sit under a special palm tree in the area between Ramah and Bethel in the country of Ephraim. And people would come to her for judgment. You can read about her also in the book of Judges, chapter 4. Now, at that time, Israel was actually oppressed by the Canaanite king Jabin, and the commander of his army was Sisera, and they were a great army. They had 900 chariots of iron, which the Israelites didn't have, and they were very fearsome. And Deborah heard from the Lord that her commander of the army, called Barak, that he was to gather 10,000 men from the tribes of Naphtali and Zebulun and come against this army of Jabin. And what Barak's, although he was a great commander, he was very frightened. He refused, actually. He said, I refuse to go into this battle, which seems too great. The odds are too great unless you come with us. And so she agreed. She said, I will come with you, but I want you to know that I believe the Lord's telling me that you will lose the final victory of the battle to a woman. And sure enough, this is what happened, because Barak went with his forces and attacked the army of Jabin, and they routed them. They had a great victory. But Sisera, the commander, managed to escape on foot, and he went to the home of a Kenite in the area whom he knew, and he asked for refuge. Now, this Kenite's wife's name was Yael, and Yael recognized him for who he was, but she agreed, and she let him come in. And he was exhausted after the battle, of course, and then she offered him milk to drink. Now, being exhausted and drinking milk, Sisera he just passed out. He just went fast asleep. And what did Yael do? She took a stake from the tent and hammer, and she hammered the stake through his temple as he slept and killed him. And that was the final victory, because after that, it says the Lord saw to it that the Jabin was completely subdued, and they never oppressed Israel. Israel was set free from his yoke after that. So it was a great victory for Deborah, for Jabin, and I mean, not for Jabin, sorry, he lost everything, but for Barak, Deborah's general, and for Yael, who was really recognized as a very brave hero after that. Now, what can we learn from this, from Deborah and Yael as well? I think you have to, from Yael, you just learn to be prepared that the Lord will put an opportunity in your hands, and you have to just, in faith, be able to act on that. But now with Deborah, she just teaches that when a woman is empowered and encouraged and allowed to operate in the gifts God has given her, that she can be a great leader, but also she can encourage the men around her. She can be a role model for the woman, but also a really encourage the men to bring forth their potential and to be the man of God he is intended to be. Now, there's a Rabbi Daniel Lapin, I think he lives in Seattle, and he points out that in Hebrew, the meaning of Deborah, is bee. Deborah is a bee, a beautiful, busy bee. I like my friend, Deborah. And he said, what's a bee's uniqueness? What's so special about a bee? A bee takes inedible pollen and converts it into sweet honey. So a bee brings about this transformation from something inedible to something sweet and energy providing. And that's what he says. Bees convert unfulfilled potential, pollen, into its ultimate destiny, honey, which is sweet tasting and energy providing. So it's just wonderful that if anyone, a man and a woman, are just enabling, but particularly women, they seem to have this ability, and you see it with a wife nurturing, a mother nurturing her children, to be able to recognize the potential and just act in a way that will bring forth that potential into something real and sweet and life-giving. So may that be so. The tribe associated with Av is Simeon. Now, unfortunately, which is interesting, Simeon was the only tribe that was not blessed. Well, no, on Jacob's deathbed, he did not give a blessing to Levi and Shimon. Why? Because of their actions in Shechem, when they took revenge for their sister Dinah's abduction, basically. And Levi was redeemed by Moses when Moses gave his final blessing to the tribes and their leaders, but Shimon wasn't. Why? Because of his flagrant immoral behavior with the women of Shittim, which you can read about in Numbers chapter 25. And also Shimon, well, if you study him, he had much anger in his character. He was really an angry person and instigated a lot of the violent reactions, even to do with Joseph, his own brother. And this anger always distorts balance and judgment in a person's thinking. And the interesting thing is also, this is proven because through all the judges of Israel, there was never one taken from the tribe of Shimon. Then he never had any judge taken from his tribe, because justice, to be true, must be tempered with mercy and also just come from a place of trust and joy in the Lord. And unfortunately, Shimon didn't evidence this in his character. But his father Jacob made a very good decision, because he said this tribe of Shimon, he won't get his own land, even heritage. He will be, let me just see here. Oh, it says in Genesis 49 verse 7, Jacob says, I will separate them, Shimon, within Jacob, and I will disperse them in Israel. So the tribe of Shimon actually was dispersed amongst the other tribes. And why? The hope, I think, the hope that Jacob had was that by mingling in amongst the other tribes, that their anger would be tempered and that they would learn how to relate with their brothers in love and peace, and then come to serve the Lord with joy, hopefully. So, let me see what we can finish with. As I said, the month of Av, the month of the Father, acts as a prelude to Elul. It's preparing our hearts for the season of Teshuvah, of repentance that's coming with the month of Elul. And it also helps us be aware, I hope, that being aware of the paradoxes of the month, that the month really illustrates, that we will be more aware of the balance of elements that we deal with constantly in our own life's journey. There's sadness and joy, there's justice and mercy, there's anger and grace, discord and unity, what is hidden and what is revealed. We're dealing with trying to balance these elements all through our lives. But what undergirds us through all that? What undergirds us is the knowledge that our Father, our Avinu Shebashamayim, our Father in heaven, is in control. Everything is in his hands, and he is preparing the way before us. Through all the ravages of history, if you look back, this is what we do during this 3 weeks. We remember the pogroms and the crusades and the atrocities that have been committed against God's people. And yet he has lifted and sustained us and helped us to transform these things. Like we were talking about how the bee transforms the pollen into the honey, that we can take what is bitter and the thorns of life, and with God and with his hand and his help, we can transform the sad memory into positive action. We can not be depressed by the sad memory. We can take the sad memory and transform it into positive action. We can take the misery and just bring repentance and forgiveness to the misery, and take the desolation and trust him with his hand and his love and his help, that with his help we can turn the desolation into redemption, and all just by his love and mighty hand with us. So I'll leave you with that as we go into the month of Av. And please be encouraged to continue in prayer for Israel and for your nation. You can find the VIP prayers on His Israel if you want to see some prayers set down, or even in the Siddur, or just pray your own prayers. We've also posted the meditations for the month of Av on the His Israel Facebook page. You can find them on the website as well. So let's just enter this month just with the blessing and the knowledge that we are not alone, that we have a mighty God standing with us, who's lifting us up and who's leading us in the path that He has prepared for us, each one individually, but as a people, as we stand with Israel. So God bless you, and may it be a very, very special month for all of us. Shalom, shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Israel.